Welcome, we are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and quite a while back we did a video on Gerald Massey's The Book of Beginnings, Volume 2 or Part 2, African Origins, or how he spells it, Origines, in 1889, around there, when he published it, wrote it and published it, of the Maori. Okay, and they stated that hieroglyphs, Egyptian hieroglyphs, were found on Pitcairn Island. It's like Easter Island, and apparently the descendants of the people on that particular island were the descendants of the British ship the Bounty. You may know of this story with Marlon Brando, Fletcher Christian, etc., and them getting with, or maybe killing him off, the captain off, or putting him on a boat and pushing him out to sea somewhere, and they lived on Pitcairn Island, something like that, and he had children and all this sort of stuff, according to that movie. It's a pretty good movie with Marlon Brando as a captain. But some centuries later, there was a big incident where certain people were getting done for sexual abuse and stuff like that. Go and do the personal research on that. So anyway, getting back to the topic, it says hieroglyphs found in Pitcairn Island. Okay, just because it has up here above about the Maori doesn't mean it's Maori related, right? Okay, so here's this, which we found through a JPEG. We didn't do it on the other video because we were too busy looking at the African origins of the Maori, comparing the supposed Akkadian Hebrew Maori words with the Egyptian, the ancient Kemet, which Massey says was the closest to that original Egyptian or Kemetic language. And it states here, rudely drawn as they are, the characters are unmistakably Egyptian hieroglyphics. That's what Gerald Massey says. But we've looked at Massey, and apparently his peers said that he was on the fringe of nonsense, wrote a load of crap. He wasn't really a historian in that sense, considered a historian in that sense. He was more of a writer and a poet, and not even an Egyptologist, a self-proclaimed but never fully qualified as far as the proper professional Egyptologist circle was in his time. Anyway, it says, rudely drawn as they are, the characters are unmistakably Egyptian hieroglyphs. Now remember, this is according to Gerald Massey. The solar disk, the so-called cake, the ideograph of land, habitation, dwelling place, the cross, the five-rayed star, the eye or spear sign, the bow, the reversed half moon, the ka, the vagina sign of the birthplace. These are all Egyptian, all there howsoever they may be interpreted. It will be observed that the straight line ascending from left to right quaintly crosses a small globe which has one pole cut off. This is our starting point. The only line yet represented as crossing the globe is the line, i.e. the line of the equator, and according to the proposed reading we have here a very crude chart in which this line denotes the equator. It cuts the globe across or in two. The northern side is missing and the southern half has a point to it, apparently meant for the southern pole. This line is too short and considerably out of drawing, but the science is here in keeping with the art. The hieroglyphic sun is drawn close to the line and determines the tropical region of the solar path. The line or course travelled by the sun from east to west. At the upper end of the line is the well-known hourglass-like sign of the equinox. Although not known to me, Gerald Massey, that is, as an Egyptian hieroglyphic, it is found on the sculptured stones. It is also the Chinese sign for number 5, an equivalent of one hand. Okay, ask an Asian, ask a Chinese that knows this sort of stuff if that's for real, right? If that's true. The first hand reckoned upon was the left, and the west was considered as being on the left hand. The figures on the upper end of the line may possibly stand for 2 legs, signs of the character, it looks like a leg here, from which we derive our written, whatever that symbol is. These, with the 2 short strokes, would read booby or bubby and denote the point of turning round in a circle, the complement of the cross sign of crossing the line. Figures which look like our 5 and 7 are also marked on the line, but our English figures are of Egyptian origin. These, however, may have been added by some mutineer, somebody off that bounty, okay? A European. Beside the equinoctial cross is the hieroglyphic cross, the sign and name of the western crossing, the Ament, entered by the sun when setting. This cross is a determinative of the crossing and transit. The Egyptian Amtu for the crossing west is repeated in the West Australian Meto for the Hades. Next to the cross is the star, a symbol of time and period. Then follows a kind of eye, unless it be the ideographic spear. The strung bow and a half moon shedding rays are the last of the upper signs. The human figure to the left below has the car sign projecting from the body. This is in the hieroglyphics determines the belly, womb or birthplace. The other 2 human figures are the signs of ka, for example, signifies a rejoicing. Ka is a call to say, is to call, say, cry, proclaim, a boundary, to boast. Okay, signifies a rejoicing. Ka is the call, say, cry, proclaim, a boundary, to boast, to be uplifted. Ka is also the name of the priest, minister or ruler, and the 3rd figure to the right appears to bear the whip sign of authority. Kaha in Maori has the meaning of a boundary. Kia kaha. Okay. The word, you always thought that was like, make Missy Kahu. Have to ask somebody about that one. Kaha in Maori has the meaning of a boundary. The word also denotes lineage, the line of ancestry. We now try to read the chart by aid of the hieroglyphics. The Egyptian north was the hinder part of the 2 heavens, or of the world, and the bird to the right is placed to the north according to the present reading. It presents a portrait of the hinder part, not only in the position of its tail, for its feet are reversed and turned backwards in the drawing. Feet turned backwards are antipodes, or antipodes. The north was the Egyptian antipodes to the south, and Ta, as representative of the sun in the north below the horizon, was portrayed like this bird with his feet turned backwards to denote the antipodes. Okay, so it might be best to go on to House of Consciousness. Ask someone like Shaka Amos that's really into that ancient Egyptian language, the ancient Kemetic language. Someone like that, even that Reggie guy, whoever that's into that, and see if they can verify that. Yeah, because Massey may be telling a load of rubbish. We don't know that. What's this? The name of the North of Maori is Nota. Really? As Nort means from, and Ta to take breath. Okay, this shows the north was, as in Egypt, the place of the breath of life and of birth. Nuta, example, signifies out of, and the lower world of the north was impersonated by the mother Neb, out of whom all came. Was it Nut? The sign of locality is also used for the horizon, and this purpose is served by the smaller figure placed between the bird in the north and the cross of the crossing west. Next to the sign of the horizon comes the crossing, followed by the sign of the cross, or to be in transitu. These are followed by the 5-rayed star. I have to ask somebody about that word. The name of the north is Norta. Don't know about that one. A star is the sign of time, a period of time when the Egyptians represent a year. They delineate Isis, i.e. a woman, the great type of periodicity. And Isis is with them a star called Sothis, or Apollo in the Greek, by the looks of it. The star is a symbol of Isis and the sealing of the Ram mission. It was a synonym of the inundation and thence of the Sothic year. In the present instant it possibly stands for 1 year. For a whole year of a time they voyaged on in what the Egyptians termed making the eye, a phrase for completing a circle. The circle of the year was completed and the eye was filled at the time of the summer solstice. The eye was full due south, therefore halfway around the north. In the north the eye was empty, in the south it was full. Quote, I have made the eye of Horus when it was not coming on the festival of the 15th day. Unquote, and here's a footnote indication here, chapter 50 or 80 or something like that. What the hell's the Roman numeral for that? Is that 50? I don't know. Anyway, it's got a footnote down there. Never was really good at Roman numerals. Okay, this is said on behalf of the moon making the eye or lunation. I have brought my orb to darkness, it has changed to light. The 15th was midway, full moon and a lunar reckoning. In making the eye they would have gone to the southern side of the world and were at a point due opposite, and it goes on and on and on. Explaining it. It goes on about this bird. By referring to maps, the reader will find that the position of our assumed Maori land northwest of the equator corresponds to the position of the largest sign of land and dwelling place. This emblem of locality is then taken to mean the birthplace and starting point from the country or city northwest of the equator. Okay, this word here, you have to be careful, don't fall for it. It's not Te Hei Māori Ora, right? It's not that particular word. Okay, a lot of teenagers will try to be cool dudes in New Zealand, say, hey Māori, or we're speaking Māori and all that sort of stuff, right? It means something completely different. What we learn as children from older people, right? Well, I don't know if this particular one spoke it fluently. He spoke it better than us. But I think if I went to an elder, but he's sort of losing his memory, stuff like that, he'd probably say it's not Māori, as been told by a mother and a friend of hers, well, the sister's boyfriend's father, right? They're not married yet, so she's not a father-in-law, right? But yeah, he could speak it fluently, so he, if he said Māori, he'd probably slap you on the ears. Okay, he'd say it's Maori, something like that. Because this is like Te Hei Māori Ora. First was the breath, or first was the marry, or first was the breath, something like that. Okay, not too hot on the what do you call it, te reo. Okay, because it's brought up by an Englishman. Okay, yeah, it goes on about the ka sign projecting from the body of the left-hand figure, betokens the belly, the body, and the kat. Yeah, sounds right. Are the children the race? These then appear to be the race from the parent ka, or it could be kaha in the Egyptian, not really sure, because they have like PTAH, which is actually ta, you don't pronounce the P. Same as with Ptolemy, you don't say Ptolemy, you say Ptolemy. These then appear to be the race from the parent ka, or birthplace of the race. The other two figures read ka, suggest that this inscription may contain a message proudly proclaimed respecting a birthplace and boundary. If this refers to Africa, then the larger of the two signs of land, next to the sign of the sun, is perfectly placed northwest of the equator in corroboration. This is apparently the subject of the ka. Pitcairn Island may be filled in near the head of the left-hand figure. We were reading before that there's only one church on that island. Maybe it is official or not official. The Seventh-day Adventist Church. Okay. It's pretty empty. There's hardly anyone on there apparently. So this information I'm saying. Okay, so such is my rendering. That's Gerald Massey's rendering of the characters, which must now take its chance with the other data concerning the African origins. Every diverse line of development continued in the worldwide ruddy. Every modification of form and feature, every colour and complexion may be more or less recognised in the African races themselves. All the various divergences we began in the primeval land and have visibly continued there to this day. No distinct type and form or colour is found elsewhere, but some incipient or initial likeness of it has extent in Africa, and he goes on and on and on. The various blacks, the coffee or the copper hued men, the red men, the yellow Mongols, and all the colours from black to white or nearly white had deposited some portrait of their past and foreshadow of their future selves in the ancestral home before they migrated to modify elsewhere. These types apparently mark the different stages of the migration and possibly indicate the starting points on the coast on the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic, and the outlet of the Nile. The present quest, however, is mainly limited to the evidence of language, mythology, folklore, and ceremonial customs. Of late, it's been proved that all didn't start from Africa or from the black race, etc. Okay, it all started from the Middle East. That's the latest claim, discovery, whatever evidence. Okay, that someone's been giving you the wrong history. The source, the root. Okay. Well, we think, yeah, okay, we could possibly go with that because in scriptures in the Bible it says there's only 8 people left on this ark, apparently. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives, right? Nobody else. Okay? And then they get off the ark, and then they have their wives and they have children, and then they became the descendants of later, we call them Ashkenazis, Gog, Magog, Mithraim or Egypt, etc., etc. Right? So then they basically migrate, spread out, fight each other, kill each other, even though they're cousins or whatever, same lineage, descendants or whatever, for their land and whatever they had, right? And then they start spreading out even more. So these different regions of the planet, yeah. And apparently they all meet up in one place. A lot of men meet up in one place. Sumer or Shinar desert region, right? And they build this ziggurat or this Tower of Babel, speaking one language, and then they get all these different languages, and they get scattered by God, and then they spread out all over the earth, right? So that's a form of migration, isn't it? But was all the earth one landmass, and then seismic shifts and all that sort of stuff broke it all up and divided everything? Probably something like that over time. Not really scientists, so we don't know that stuff, but we at least know that in the book of Genesis there was a river that flowed through Eden and watered all the plants and all that sort of stuff, but then it broke or was separated into 4 tributaries or heads: the Pishon, the Gishon, the Tigris to the Euphrates, and that other one, right? Yeah. Okay. And then you got the sacredtext.com, where it says a group of about 100 people in Africa, started these families or whatever, over a 6,000 year period or something like that. You have to go look at sacredtext.com. We haven't seen that for ages, but it's something like that. Yeah, something like a group of 100 people in Africa started a family or something, a group of people 6,000 years ago, something like that. You have to have a look at it. Actually, we could probably have a look at it. We'll just put it up here because we don't want to get you wrong. We'll go sacred text under Africa when we get there. African section. Okay. Internet Sacred Text Archive. Have a look at Africa when it gets there. I could use the bookmark anyway. Could have got there faster. Can you go and have a look at African? This is according to mitochondrial DNA. Ultimately, we are all Africans. Studies of mitochondrial DNA have proven that all human beings are descended from a small population, less than 100 individuals that emerged from Africa about 60,000 years ago. Okay, 60,000. That's how long it took the Australian Aborigines to walk from Europe down all those countries to Australia. This guy that did the rock research and all the archaeologist, whatever he was, he came to that conclusion. He says, like, the former claim is actually way out. It was wrong, and that they'd got there 60,000 years before, right? The earliest written religious text, as well as the first documented monotheistic religion, also developed in Africa. Yeah, it's a single god, right? During the European Dark Ages, many ancient manuscripts were preserved in African libraries in places such as Ethiopia and Timbuktu. Yeah, because supposedly Akhenaten, he broke away from the pantheon of gods of the Egyptians and had this one god, Aten, sun god, etc., etc. But it didn't last, and then all the people, once he was gone, went back to their pantheon of many gods, right? Or the pantheon of gods. Okay. The people demanded it to these priests, etc., supposedly, and they all ended up giving in and allowing the people to do that. Something like that, along those lines. Yeah. This section has texts on the traditional spirituality of sub-Saharan Africa, etc., etc. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a lot of God and Jesus stuff, as the Hebrew Israelites whatever claim that it all comes from Africa. It's mainly like old myths and stuff, you know, until the European came, and these Africans were looking after them because they got sick or something like that, and then they were trying to hit them with the Christianity and all that sort of stuff, and these people says, yeah, well, and so forth. Okay, finding books about African religion and spiritual beliefs in the public domain was not difficult. These books have a great amount of useful information on this topic. Some are written before colonialism destroyed or greatly modified aspects of traditional culture. The problem with these works is that they were for the large part written by Europeans with their particular biases and agendas. For this reason, sacredtext.com encourages you to read between the lines. The texts here are provided for scholarly purposes for students, etc. Right? They may contain racist characterizations, errors, or interpretation because they're translated or modified by Europeans, right, with their particular biases and agendas. They may contain racist characterizations, errors of interpretation, or misrepresentations of traditional culture. For instance, the term kefa, which is used in many of these texts to refer to the Xhosa, Nelson Mandela's tribe, is now considered derogatory. Yeah, because there's one word in the Arabic, kafir, there's probably this one here, which means infidel, but the Dutch South Africans use the word kafir, right? Mother was at a casino here with a friend, and he says, hey boy, kafir, get out the way, this white guy, Dutch South African guy, right? Says, hey, kafir, you should be like shining my shoes or something. And they got hell for it, right? And got thrown out for that racist remark. Not the kind of thing you say to the Maori people, right? It's considered derogatory. This page also has texts and books with alternate views, primarily written by African Americans, which, in sacredtext.com's opinion, also deserve consideration. Africa is home to a rich religious tradition, and it says refer to ancient Egypt, Islam and Christianity, because that's where ancient Egypt was, alright, in Africa. It wasn't in the Middle East, as some like to claim, right? They were the mercantile trade centre for the Mesopotamians, the Phoenicians, those who came by sea, peoples on the sea, etc., etc. Right? So apparently the first they've been called the first civilization. Yeah, the first to be civil as a civilization, not beating each other up, killing each other off, because they came together, the north and the south, and became one, etc., etc. Whereas other ones like possibly Mesopotamian and others fought each other, killed each other, right? So that's not very civil, is it? It's like the US Civil War, north and south against each other, right? And yet they're the same country. So yeah, define civil, it's when you can get along. You're civil, aren't you? not fighting with each other over a little piece of turf or whatever. Yeah, and some books here. They're all folklore. There's nothing really Jesus in there, you know. Okay, there's some more of the Bantu. If you read them, you'll find that it wasn't until the European came with his Christianity and he started getting sick that these Africans were looking after them, you know, healed them, all that sort of stuff with their medicines, whatever. And then they started to preach them there, or ask some questions, you know, in regard to their Christianity and the Africans, folklore and all that sort of stuff, right? Okay, so yeah, that's what it says here. It's all mitochondrial DNA. Okay, there might not have been a actual Adam from the Bible. There might have been a mitochondrial Adam or mitochondrial Eve. Okay. Okay, so yeah, this book of beginnings. Yeah, I don't know about that. He says here, that which has haunted us all around the globe is like a ghost in Hebrew, becomes reality itself in Egyptian. Most precious fragments of mythology have been rejected as too like the Hebrew, not to be a modern importation, and some in this way have been lost. Yeah, okay, but the missionaries and navigators did not convey 500 words and the earliest myths and symbols of Egypt into Mangaya and New Zealand, when these were safely buried underground in the sealed secrecy of the hieroglyphic characters. Okay, it goes on and on and on. We read somewhere not so long ago. What was it? Oh, jeez, forgot what it was now. Had it there in the brain, but then just lost it. Yeah, it goes on and on. Yeah. Let's have this. You might remember what it was. Oh yeah, that's it. We read not so long ago that the Maori didn't have a language written down; they only spoke it, right? And apparently, a certain chief or speaker, he got a free trip to England, and he was over there, and he helped to put it into a written form because these Europeans that suggested it. Okay, we need it in a written form. Yeah, so have a record of it, etc., etc. So this guy supposedly put it all into the written form that you have today. Yeah, this is way back in the 1800s, maybe early 1900s apparently. We'd provide you a link to that information, but we can't exactly remember where it is. It's always best to have a source to those links, right? So you've got that sort of backup, or else it's just hearsay. But yeah, apparently he did that because it was an oral language. It wasn't a written down, scripted. So he had to go to England and all this sort of stuff, and he created this written version of that language, or the script. Okay, there's quite a lot of information here. Start to shift into evolution, and in the West Australias, all this sort of stuff. There was another guy that said all this Australian said all this other stuff, but he was poo-pooed by his peers as well. I can't remember if his name was Smith, something like that. Did a video on him, talking about him. Yeah. What's this? The tree was African once. It is English now. In the young green branches is the old life renewed, and may they flourish unfadingly. Already they stretch as widely around the surface of the earth as did the roots of Egypt underground. Egypt was parent of the initial unity in language, arts, laws, religion, and in our English tongue it appears dreamable that mankind may ultimately obtain the final unity of the universal race. But it is not possible for this new great green tree to extend. It's going on and on. The Kaffirs, the Red Indians, the Maori are withering underneath its shadow, and our tree of life is for them. The fabled Upas found at last. It is the tree of death that... Is he talking about... No, it's in the Maori different word. I'm going to get lost going into that one. It is the tree of death that take them blah blah blah. Is our final message delivered to them by the typical militant Christian with a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other? Yeah, Amen, 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 Amen. Thank you for all that we received, Lord. Now pass the ammunition. Okay, some quote like that, similar to that. As a final message delivered to them by the typical militant Christian with a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other, to believe what we tell you about this book, be saved at once, and pass off peaceably into another life, as there is no room for you in this, and the white earth devourers are daily hungering more and more to eat up your ever listening lands at last. Is that like hinting at they want to steal their lands, all that sort of stuff? Get into this book, become controlled, whatever it's hinting at there. Okay, this is section 23, Roots in Africa Beyond Egypt. Alfred Russel Wallace, he's co-contributor with Darwin in his discovery and promulgation of the doctrine of evolution. Yeah, apparently Darwin plagiarised a lot of this guy's stuff. There's people that say, this guy was black, he came up with it first, and this guy, European, stole it and all this sort of stuff. Here it says Ethiopia and Egypt produced the earliest civilization in the world. Yeah, civilization, and then it became that mercantile trade centre, the main trade centre for everybody else. Okay, they were the first ones to become civil, unite, and not beat each other up and kill each other, fight with each other. Right, whereas Mesopotamia and everybody else, Assyria, etc., etc., they, went and attacked somebody else or fought amongst themselves, possessions and land and all that sort of stuff. So that's what they mean by civilization. Okay, the first civilization, but they weren't the earliest culture or civilization, because there was the Mesopotamians, the Assyrians. Okay, if you go by the Bible, Genesis, it tells you that Adam and Eve went east. Cain went east into the land of Nod, and then everyone went east, right, to the Tigris in the east, Cush, etc., etc. It's all in the east, right? They're all heading east. Okay, so yeah, first you've got the Tigris, the Euphrates, etc., the land of the Ashur or Ashuri, which is Assyria, Shinar or Sumer, which is the Mesopotamian Assyrian area. Okay, so it's all in the east, right? And then all these tribes mentioned in the genealogy are going east, and then Noah and them get out of the ark, right? And they have descendants and all that sort of stuff, and they sort of head to the east and they have descendants and carry on. And then they are supposedly the forefathers of the Ashkenazi, Gog, Magog, Cush, what do they call it? Miriam or something, or Mizraim, etc., which is Egypt, right? The darker races and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, it's all there in Genesis. Okay, but yeah, that's when it all started spreading up. And later on, like the Ashkenazi, they became the forefathers. The descendants were the Germans and something. Then there's the Medes, and the Anglo-Saxons, and so forth. Right, the Egyptians, and so on. Okay. We've done a video covering that. The original ancient Brita in the Aramaic, the original ancient old sacred scribal old tongue or language of the Nishana Attika Cypriot, which is from the Tav Eshtret, which is the older sister language of the Tav Ivri or original ancient very old Hebrew. Okay, so yeah, I'd take this guy Massey with a grain of salt and heaps of mustard, because what we've stated about the guy, he wasn't officially an Egyptologist or a historian, same as H.G. Wells. He wasn't really a historian, he's a sci-fi writer, that's who he's known as, right? But at least he got accurate, okay? About the Crusades and all that sort of stuff. But it sort of was Eurocentric and hinted at prejudice, bias, racist, right? goings on throughout history. It's not necessarily pointing at H.G. Wells and saying, oh, he was a racist. Okay. That book was recommended by Dr. John Henry Clark, that Pan-African founder. Yeah. We watched a couple of his lectures, debates and all that the other day, and he was recommending that. Recommended a lot of books actually, and we'll get to those, especially that outline of history by H.G. Wells and so forth. So yeah, it goes on and on and on like that, just like us. We might end it there. Okay, you can read it yourself. Yeah, you know where to find it. It's on archive.org. Just type in Gerald Massey, A Book of the Beginnings, or Gerald Massey, and you'll be able to read it for yourself. It's got some information here on the Fijians and all this sort of stuff. Yeah. Do your own personal research. Establish these facts as fact, the evidence is evident, and that Massey's infallible and irrefutable, all of his claims. But yeah, what we've found is from his peers, he was on the fringe of much nonsense apparently. Go do a personal research on Gerald Massey, the history of him, and that sort of thing. There's a lot of information there. If we covered all of it, read all of it, it'd probably be a 6-week video or longer. Okay, we were told by a Maori guy we came across that there was carvings found in the Egyptian tombs. Someone else said something. It just went on and on like that, Found out a couple of months ago or something that the Chinese were here in New Zealand like 2,000 years before the Maori. They've only been here 800 years or something, and all that they're teaching you is incorrect. But yeah, that's the culture, right? You'd have to do massive work, research on that, and establish the facts as facts, the evidence is evident, etc., etc. Which is not that easy to do. Okay. So hopefully that gave you some insight, opened your eyes to Gerald Massey in this claim of the hieroglyphs in the Pitcairn Islands, where it states that most of the descendants were that followed after the mutiny, the Bounty, that ship the Bounty, as on the Mutiny on the Bounty film with Marlon Brando. Yeah, they were all children of those European sailors and stuff, right? Okay, and then they had a big incident. There was an investigation that so and so was a dirty bugger, and a lot of them got done for it. Yeah, so if you like this video, subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments down below. You may know something we don't, and provide the backup, the source, the links, etc. Okay, because without those, it's just hearsay. Okay. Yeah, and you go tell your friends, family, etc. about this video and our channel, the Ministry of the Real Truth, who bring you the real truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. If you make a mistake, we'll put a note down at the bottom, let you know, oh, we made a mistake, we said Maori instead of Māori or something, or whatever, whatever, Maori, whatever. We wrote the wrong thing, misquoted it, whatever. Because, yeah, we're human, we make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes, but remember, to err is human, but to forgive is divine. Oh, William Shakespeare speak, right? Okay.